Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for August the 20th, 2015. Our first order of business will be to receive the minutes of the August 6th, 2015 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Am I allowed to vote on this even though I wasn't here since we're not adopting them?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Record your vote. The minutes are approved. Continuous requests or withdrawal requests by staff.
We have two today. Item number 7, case number 14115 is requesting a continuance to September 3rd, and item number 8, case number 14109 is also requesting a continuance to September 3rd.
I would entertain a separate motion to address both of those.
I'll make a motion to continue case number 14115 to September the 3rd.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Register your vote. That case is continued.
I'll make a motion to continue case number 14109 to September the 3rd.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Register your vote. That case is continued. Do we have any continuous requests or withdrawal requests from the public? Hearing none, Kathy, let's proceed with our first case.
Item number 1, case number 14073, request of Brooklyn Workman for a variance to the side yard setback located at 8815 Legacy Crossing Drive.
Please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Cindy Cook. My address is 8825 Legacy Crossing Drive.
Are you here to speak on behalf of this application?
Yes, sir.
Do you represent the Workmans?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you here at the last meeting?
No, sir.
Did you watch a video of the last meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of the conversation that occurred between this board and the applicant?
No, sir.
Okay. Is the neighbor who objected to the variance requests present today? Or have you had a conversation with them?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Then go ahead and present your case.
Okay, the wing wall on the south side, I guess, the right side of that picture is the wing wall that they're requesting the variance on. The air conditioner units are right behind it, sitting on the south, or it's really the west side of the house, so they wanted to build the wing wall to extend it so that you couldn't see the air conditioner units.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. Board members, wasn't this or have I got my cases mixed up? Was this not the case where the siding of the house, and originally they had asked for just a variance back to 5 feet? They wanted it 20 foot into the, am I correct or not?
No, this is the one where no one showed up at the last meeting. You were at the first meeting, but you didn't have enough information.
A different person, yes, that was out of
and then
town.
at the second meeting, they didn't show up, so.
If you're confused, then I apologize. I have my cases mixed up.
I lived there confused. You're good.
There's also a structure that doesn't show up on your drawing.
Correct.
That's an accessory building. Mm-hmm. Was that, I'm just curious, was that an approved structure? Because it looks like it's in the setback also.
It is not in the setback. It is I would say it was it's a footing, so it was 16 feet off, and then they added brick, so it's probably 15 feet 9 inches from the property line.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that wasn't something we were going to have to come back and...
No.
Okay.
If the setback is 15 foot is my understanding, and it's 15.9 off of the property line.
Did you say there is no one here signed up to speak?
There's no one that I'm aware of. Anybody here to speak on this case?
Staff doesn't reference any unfavorable considerations, and if no one is in opposition to it, I can clearly see that the parcel is unique. I understand that the house has already been built anyway, and I think the other two elements are satisfied. I'd make a motion to approve the application.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Register your vote. You are approved.
Thank you.
Item number 2, case number 14110, request of Moore Public Schools for a variance to the sign regulations located at 14141 South Pennsylvania Avenue.
Hello.
My name's John Marin, M-A-R-R-E-N, 1500 Southeast 4th Street. I'm the Director of Operations for Moore Schools.
And tell us about your application and your...
We are asking for a variance on the height of our sign at our new junior high school on Pennsylvania, 14141 South Pennsylvania. This would allow us to remain consistent with all of our other junior high signs. It's the first junior high we've built in a long, long time. And if you've been out there, it's beautiful, beautiful building. This variance would allow us to have a sign consistent and also really enhance the look of the school.
Your variance requested is substantial, but you're saying that all the other junior high schools in the district have signage that's consistent with what you're asking for?
Similar height signs. It helps us to kind of, when there's a marquee out there, it helps us to get the marquee up to a manageable level so that we don't get vandalism and kids sometimes come and rearrange our letters and get some pretty interesting signage.
How often does that happen? I'm sorry to smirk, but that is...
Period, a couple times a year.
Okay. Speak to this point. In reading what you submitted in your application,
Yes.
I haven't seen a signage request quite like this before, I don't think.
Okay.
I'm curious, you talk about issues with students. One of the reasons that you reference that you have an unnecessary hardship is that the students will ridicule each other.
There are times, and that probably more so than that, we do have, when you have 6 junior high schools, 5 prior to this, there is a bit of back and forth that goes between, and a lot of it is between the students. A lot of it is, frankly, between the parents and community, and we try to keep everything as equal as we can from one school to the next so that one school doesn't feel slighted. We've got junior high schools that are quite old, and now we've got a new building, and so there's challenges for us to keep everybody on the same playing field, and that's how we try to do our signage.
What's the speed limit on this road?
I want to say it's 40, but...
It is. It's 40. I'm Crystal with Insignia Signs, and our address is 809 Southeast 83rd. We took pictures of all the other Moore School junior highs and have heights, and I don't know if that's even something you're interested in.
I don't know that that's particularly relevant, and I'm trying to help advance the argument that you have for needing the additional signage. I'm trying to look for things that might be able to assist you guys in justifying it. I mean, I can't say that for me it's persuasive to any degree that schools that were built when the side ordinances were different and things,
right.
We may have had different rules at those times than we have now, and we have a lot of people come in here asking for variances to signage, and oftentimes they're granted. This is more akin to maybe like neighborhood signage. It's not like you guys are, hoping that somebody will drive in and get their hair cut or order a pizza from you.
Right.
But wayfindings and issues like that can be reasons that we grant variances, or it's a justification that there's a need for that. You're driving by really fast and the sight triangle's poor, and so you got, I don't know how many umpteen parents and kids trying to get in and out of there at sometime in the morning and sometime in the afternoon. But those are the issues, but none of that stuff's been mentioned in the application. So I don't know how to support an application where our hardship is simply that kids, might ridicule each other over the size of the respective signage.
Right, and I understand that. And but along with that, and it wasn't in the application, but we do. It would make our campus easier to locate. It is kind of out there in a more rural area than we're accustomed to. You come up kind of on a slight hill once you pass the Sonic there on the left-hand side, and it just it would kind of identify the campus a little bit.
I had one question. You mentioned vandalism. Staff actually talked about that. Have you had any vandalism of your signs?
Not at this site, but at our other sites, we typically try to put our sign, the marquee part of the sign where we put, parent-teacher conferences or all of our movable lettering on the signs. We try to get those up off the ground so that just a passerby, it just makes it a little more difficult for them to cause problems.
I'm sorry, but I can't support this application. I had the perhaps misfortune, but perhaps fortune to take care of the sign at my daughter's elementary school for about 6 or 7 years. And it was just a small marquee sign out in front of the school. I don't think people are going to have any trouble finding the junior high school. Okay. I'm pretty sure everybody will know exactly where it is. I just can't support a variance. Purpose in the change to the sign regulations was to eliminate these really tall signs, and it's just part of the change in the over time, and I don't see anything here to support this kind of variance.
Is there any more discussion, or are we ready to make a motion?
I'd make a motion that we deny the application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the application. Register your vote. You are denied, sir.
Thank you for your consideration.
You're welcome.
Item number 3, case number 14111, request of Reno Cafe LLC for a variance to allow a building with exposed exterior metal located at 220 South Vermont Avenue.
If you would, just give us your name and address for the record.
David Benham, 22901 Lauren Lane. I'm here representing 220 South Vermont, and we're proposing to do an exterior renovation on the building, and we're wanting to use a high-end architectural metal on the building, but we can't get our building permit because we're zoned Commercial 3. Most of the properties in that area are Industrial 2, I-2, and we're not looking to build a prefab metal building or anything of that sort. Again, it's a high-end industrial-grade architectural metal, and it will actually improve the appearance of the building substantially. I don't believe that granting the variance would in any way circumvent the intent of the ordinance, because most of the properties are already zoned I-2 in that area and are prefab metal buildings in that area. But that's not what we're proposing anyway. Again, it's a nice architectural metal that will enhance the area, so I'd like to respectively ask the board to consider my application.
Jeff, are there people here in opposition of this?
Nobody signed up.
We've seen a number of these cases, and staff within its considerations reminds us, but like I said, we've seen a number of these. The purpose of this ordinance is to address the issue of basically a standard metal facade on industrial type buildings. And we've had a number of people, some of them you've shown us here, there are others that have requested this. I think this is another clear example that this is outside the confines of what the ordinance tried to protect the areas from in our city. So unless there's some board member who feels differently, I'd make a motion to approve the application.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the application. Register your vote. You're approved.
Thank you, board.
Item number 4, case number 14112, request of David D. Lenormand for a variance to the sign regulations located at 9400 Broadway Extension.
Good afternoon. My name is Kent Gilliland, and I am counsel for Dave Lenormand and Lenormand Properties, which is the actual owner of the building. Dave Lenormand is the sole member of Lenormand Properties. So the reason that we're here today is twofold. We're asking for some variance to sign restrictions under the current zoning ordinances. One of those requests is for 2 signs instead of 1 sign. Currently, the regulations, as you know, only permit 1 sign to be on the top of the building. We're asking, because of this peculiar shape of this property, it sort of sits at an angle on Broadway Extension. It's at Broadway Extension and Britton Road. We're asking for a sign on the southwest elevation and the northwest elevation so we can pick up both north and southbound traffic on Broadway Extension. We also are asking for 2 signs because it's a fairly significant sized building. It's 160,000 square feet, multiple tenants, and Trey Dupree with Price Edwards, who's the manager and leasing agent for this building, can talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But we've had some difficulty recruiting tenants to take substantial space in this building because of the fact that they can't put a sign up on the top of the building. Now, currently, regulations permit a sign, but because of the size and shape of this building, on that southwest elevation, it's like 130 feet wide. Well, under the current regulations, it provides for a sign of about 65 square feet, which we sit back about 1,000 feet from Broadway Extension. So we're situated a little bit differently than most properties, commercial properties that are on main thoroughfares like this. So at 65 square feet, you really can't hardly see it from Broadway Extension, or it would be difficult to see. So we're asking that to be expanded to an area of 350 square feet, just so that it can be picked up by drivers on Broadway Extension. We've actually pulled and done a formula through the United States Sign Council. They have a formula that they use to calculate the necessary size of a sign based on the building size, how far it's back from site, how high it is. And under that formula, it comes out to about 453 square feet. We don't think we need that much. The sign company that we've worked with thinks we can get by with 350 square feet. We think that's the minimum amount that we would need, so that's all we're requesting in this case. But we feel like we need to have that in order to be able to advertise tenants there, because we've got current tenants that we've tried to negotiate with that have been reluctant to sign up for our space because of the fact that they can't get a size of significance up there. So we think that we're suffering an undue hardship in this case. We think we're different than other properties, that the conditions apply to us a little bit different than they might to other commercial properties because of the fact that we're 1,000 feet set back from Broadway Extension. At the same time, we're surrounded by other commercial properties. I think on the east side, there's a parking lot on the east side of our building, and there's a child care center. It's actually zoned R1, but on the west side that abuts our property is actually a child care center, so it's not like there are homes there. So we don't feel like in this side, these signs wouldn't face that direction anyway. They face toward Broadway Extension. So we really don't see that it would create any undue distraction. We wouldn't, the light from the signs at night shouldn't bother any residents because it's all pretty much a commercial area. If you got any questions, I'm happy to address them. Trey Dupree with Price Edwards is here. He can address any questions you might have about the leasing matters. We also submitted a packet of other buildings in town and the signs at the top of those buildings, and many of those were larger than permitted by current ordinances, and those people received variances also. And we think our particular property is even more peculiar than those because of the distance we sit back from Broadway Extension. But if you have any questions, we'd certainly be happy to address those.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to let the board know that I have represented someone within the past 4 months that directly brought a lawsuit against Mr. Lenormand, and that litigation is terminated and has been settled, but I wanted to disclose that. I think since it's terminated, I don't think that it's a conflict, but if you disagree, I would be happy.
In fact, it was my firm that handled that litigation.
Yes.
We were aware of that, and we had that discussion. We decided that it would not, that litigation's been terminated for a period of time, and we decided that that would not be a conflict in this situation.
Thank you.
Questions for the applicant from board members?
If I could point out, I just want to mention towards the leasing of the building as a representative for Mr. Lenormand and the leasing of 1 Benham Place, 9400 North Broadway Extension. It's not that we're trying to lease a 3,000 square foot space to a tenant off the streets. We have a marquee space, which is the top floor, which was previously occupied by Hilton and Brewer law firm, that has been empty. We would like that to become a marquee space of the building and keep that space intact. It's about 18,000 square feet. We've had many prospects, but with the prospects comes the question of signage. And, you know, we find that with buildings we're in competition with, you know, as we're an option of many out there, we do kind of feel there is a hardship when being put up against certain other buildings of the same class and situation that do have and have been allowed a variance of this magnitude.
Your application, excuse me, is actually a request for 2 signs. And what's illustrated for us is a sign that says Lenormand Properties. Is that are you using it as an example, or is that an intent?
No, I'm sorry. It is used as an example because we don't have a tenant at this point that's taking the space. We're talking to tenants about the space. Don't have a tenant signed up for this space. So it kind of is pinning on this.
So you guys are essentially trying to get a variance so that a prospective tenant doesn't have that obligation to come to the board, and that's a condition prior to them agreeing to come to terms with you on a lease. Is that fair?
That's exactly right, and that's fair. And one of the reasons that we did choose to use Lenormand Properties LLC is that they do manage the property, and it could be, in fact, one day a space where Mr. Lenormand would operate from. And as the owner of the building, he would be a good example as a person who would particularly like to have signage on the building.
I think in a normal circumstances, and some of the things your examples illustrate, they come and they are, you know, they're occupants of these properties, and there is an argument to be made. I think there might be someone that disagrees, but there's an argument to be made about the sign code here that these large facilities that were O2 are subjected to a sign code that was intended to try and regulate signage across the board, but you get into assets of this size, like other examples of what you've presented, and it is an issue from a competitive standpoint for marketability, and it's an issue for proper identification. And assets of this size, when you get into 160,000 square foot buildings, 200,000 square foot buildings, some of these other examples, these are properties that need to be identified to be competitive. And the tenants that occupy them, they want that identification as well. That's one of the reasons why they rent space there. So I think I'm sensitive to your interpretation of the code, and I'm inclined to support the application. I think my reservation in supporting it is that we've made a preliminary request for 2. You don't have signage at all now. You want signage, and one of the reasons that we consider each variance request on its own merit is because people will come here, get a variance, then they'll go out, and if they've done something differently and they want another one, or they weren't exactly forthright with what happened, there's an opportunity there to re-examine that before we consider granting another variance. And so I can't say that I'm comfortable with multiple variances for signage. I could say that I would support a single variance request for what you guys just said, to go out and be able to use that because this building's not identified.
Right, you're exactly right. We have, as you pointed out, we have 0 signage on the building at this point, and I don't disagree with your claim that, yes, we need, or we're asking for at least 1 sign to be able to market to a marketable tenant for a marquee position in the building. The request, I think, for the second sign is more due to the ownership. They would like to be able to brand the building as the owner of the building, and in the spaces that have been identified in the packet. And I don't view this too much differently in the way that the variances were granted for the 3401 Northwest 63rd building. We haven't been denied a permit. We're not coming to you because we've applied for a permit and it's been denied, so I understand that. But at the same time, that particular building has been granted 3 variances for 3 signs on both the north, south, and west elevation. And it kind of puts me at a disadvantage when only one of them's up, but they do have the rights to still market 2 more spaces. This I know because I've been a tenant representation with a current tenant out in the marketplace, and have been told that they can not only accommodate signs for the other tenant or / owner, which is CBRE, as well as another space for a marquee tenant. So I use that as a kind of a case study to compare the two buildings against. Both Class B buildings, they're both zoned in the O2, zoned O2 classification. We're double the size of that building. We're higher, we're taller than that building. You know, the variance that they requested created almost a 2,000% increase in under what the ordinance would have allowed based on the width of the building.
I'm sorry, does anyone recall when 4301 63rd was granted variances?
And that's a typo, I apologize, it should be 3401.
It was within recent memory, I'll say, and couldn't make a better case for why it was a bad idea then and why we have done a disservice by handing out sign variances like lollipops. It creates sign competition.
Yeah.
The sign ordinance was one of the most vigorously negotiated ordinances the city has ever adopted. It was tooth and nail. It was toe to toe. And to suggest that somehow there were, you know, structures that were sort of not thought about or left out or, you know, not considered the realities of, it's just simply not accurate.
Well, but we see these cases all the time, so is that a byproduct of granting them, in your opinion, versus an issue with the sign code?
I absolutely do think so. I think we are creating sign competition. And North Broadway extension is considered an appearance corridor. Every zoning case that comes up, the signage is vigorously negotiated, and it is held to an absolute minimum for that reason, to prevent sign competition along the corridor.
I understand, but it's very difficult. Maybe I'm overly sensitive to the realities of helping buildings compete in the marketplace. Signage is a big part of that, whether you have a small retail center or you've got an office building of this nature. But when you're talking about renting to tenants who are going to take, what's the vacant square footage you've got?
The vacant square footage that we're trying to create for a marquee tenant is 18,000 square feet. And that's on a single floor on the 8th floor, which is the smallest floor plate that we have.
I was about to say, what's the floor plate?
18,000.
So you got a whole
looking
floor.
for a full floor tenant, and no full floor tenant is going to come in without the expectation of wanting some type of signage rights. And I do understand that Broadway Extension is, you know, well, I forget the exact term you used, a beautification corridor?
The appearance corridor.
Appearance corridor. And while zoned under different categories, the nature of the use of several buildings along Broadway Extension are office buildings, and it's not unlike Kilpatrick Bank, even though it is zoned differently, has 2 signs on the Paragon building, which are in well excess of what would be granted to an O2 type sign. But there again, the Paragon and One Benham Place on the same corridor are in competition with each other. A little bit further down the road, you have the Commons on Broadway, which has the MACU sign, it has Hogan and Taylor, and it also has, I believe now, the Vanguard Development Group, which is the ownership group of that building as well. So not only do you have 3 signs, you have 2 signs on one fascia of the building, which is the west-facing fascia, which is the one that faces Broadway Extension. And I believe the Vanguard sign is on the south fascia. So it was tricky how they got around that, but and I know how their PUD allowed for it because we did the leasing there back when I was at Grubb & Ellis. But
I'm gonna look foolish if I'm wrong. I don't remember. I don't think that I was on the board at the time that 3401 was considered, because I would totally agree with you. We can't. I mean, that's where I would draw the line as it being an issue with the sign code, the variance request, to be handing out these to-be-used variances for signage for things that don't exist yet, which is precisely why my pushback to you is that I can't support the 2. I can support the 1, and I do support the 1. If there's another issue with it and a tenant comes in, then you can always come back for another one, and that's what one of the examples that you did, and one that I do recall from being on the board, Not that they matter, but I'm just using your comparisons to give you some explanation, is 3501 across, those were multiple requests that were brought individually and considered each time the tenant wanted new signage. We granted them on their individual merits. We're doing that here. We did it in all the other ones. But I agree with you, Janice, that we can't give them out for nothing. I can't support the two, but I do support the one.
Well, I think we're a little bit different than some buildings in respect to the way that we're situated on the property. So if we put one just on that southwestern side, we get no visibility from southbound traffic, only from northbound traffic. So, I mean, we may have a tenant that wants both elevations, signs on both elevations, which again restricts our ability to negotiate with that tenant. So, you know, I think, I understand your argument. I just feel like we're being put at a disadvantage in the market by doing that, when you've got other buildings that have received more.
And I think, you know, this is what Janice is telling you, is that every time you grant a variance, it is used as a justification for the next request, and the next request, and the next request. And part of the intention of the sign ordinance is to rein this in. You see that we see the same thing on sidewalk requirements. They go, you know, there's no pedestrian traffic, it goes nowhere, and that's their justification for not having to comply, and it's not a justification. The expense of it is not a justification. You've also got American Fidelity that's just south, and, you know, is building the parking garage, and I mean, I guess, you know, for us, first of all, is examining your case individually, and we do consider them individually, and what somebody else has done does not necessarily compel us to replicate that, you know, what they've done. The other thing, too, is, you know, the more variance requests that are granted, then it becomes harder and harder, and, you know, American is going to be a good example. I mean, you know, they're doing their parking garage, they've moved in down there. It's just a matter of time, I think, you know. So that's the dilemma for us. This building was formerly the Benham Building for years, and there was, as I recall, a sign that said Benham. And it was on the exposure where you've illustrated it in your application. I don't remember what that sign was. It wasn't very large. It wasn't lighted. And so, you know, I'm sympathetic to, you know, the dilemma as you try to lease this space and you've got a major tenant who's making a major commitment to you. They want some, you know, acknowledgement that this is their home and this is their office space. But at the same time, you know, we look at the requirements for a variance and, you know, what are they? The argument, you know, for the signage, the second sign, I think, is probably not going to hold water. I think, you know, it's like Scott said, you know, in the event that you do lease that and somebody wants that, they have every right, you know, to make application and appear before this board and make that request. But I can tell you that I think you're going to find, you know, that this board generally is going to push back on variance requests on signage. You just saw the more schools denied.
I understand that.
You're not even talking about a commercial enterprise. You're talking about a school district. So just be aware that we are very cognizant of the intent of the sign regulations, and, you know.
Of course, when you are talking about a commercial enterprise, you are talking about an economic hardship. And for a school, you're not necessarily talking about an economic hardship for a school that doesn't have a sign.
But and truthfully, economic hardship is not a justification for your variance request.
So I'm going to move for denial.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Do you want to amend your request?
Do you want to amend it to one sign?
Or you can request a continuance if you all want to, you know, reconvene amongst yourselves and at some point and perhaps adjust the variance requirement. Because right now, what you're requesting is 2 signs and 350 square feet each, and what you're allowed is 65 square foot. I mean, it's a substantial departure from what's allowed.
And I understand. I don't want y'all to think that we're not cognizant of the fact that y'all don't want this to get away from y'all, and that is by no means what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to stay competitive in the marketplace. And like I said, the perfect example of 3401 with the Christensen Law Group being granted not only just one, but 3 signs in excess of 1,000 square feet when only allotted 65 square foot. I know you have to look at every case on an individual basis, but
And I think we hear you. But right now, I have a motion on the floor to deny your application, and your application is 2 signs of 350.
Can we visit for just a
And
minute?
the question was, do you want to amend it? I think I don't want to put words in Kevin's mouth, but my suggestion is to amend it to 1 sign. And is that what you're getting at?
That, either amend it or continue it, because
Can we have just maybe a few minutes to visit about that?
if the board, consents, we can move you down to the end of the agenda, and that would give you a few minutes to step into the lobby and visit.
Would that be acceptable?
I'll move that we continue to the end of the agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. You're moved to the end of the agenda then.
Thank you very much.
Item number 5, case number 14113, request of Matt and Kelly McGuire for a variance to allow a single-family residence encroaching the 30-foot platted front building line located at 4212 North Harvey Parkway.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Give us your name and address for the record.
Mark Crittenbrake. I live at 428 West Eufaula, and I'm an architect, and I'm representing the owners. And let me just say, I'm thankful that this request involves no signage request.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I'm sitting back there thinking, yeah, it's a good day for Mark Crittenbrake. This is actually my niece and her nephew, her husband, and they purchased this house, and you can see what they have. It's a good site. The house is tucked up really close to the front property line. You can see the front building line. You can see the 30-foot building line setback is right there touching the front corner of their building. What they've had for a front porch here has been a metal awning that water has gotten down behind. It's rotted out. They just bought this house. And water has gotten down behind the awning. It's rotted out the fascia. And so what they'd like to do is create a new front porch roof, if you will, that gives a little bit more definition to where the front porch is. By so doing, we encroach a little less than 3 feet on one side, a little more than 2 feet on the other side into the front yard setback for a total of about 20 square feet. This allows us to do a gable front porch entry, and I submitted visuals with the application, that accentuates where the entry is. Right now, it's a long-running roof that lends itself to, there you can kind of see what it is, lends itself to not really accentuating where the entry is. And that's it. You can kind of see there how the building line sets back and what we're asking to do. It's a nice neighborhood, spacious lots, spacious yards. This has a big, huge backyard. It would be nice if they were positioned a little bit farther back, but they're not.
Are there pillars to support the front of the porch?
Yes, they are.
I went by and looked at this. I happen to live not too far from here. This is on a kind of a curved street, and so it's not a situation where you have, a straight line down the street. Each of the houses, the one on the north side of this one sits forward a little bit. And the one on the left, on the south side, sits a little bit oddly so that
Yeah, they're all kind of skewed.
Part of it is forward and part of it is back. Clearly, there's a lot of work being done to the house. The joys of home ownership in this area. I don't have a problem with this at all. I think it'll definitely improve the front of the house, and will be not dissimilar to its neighbors on either side, so that it will stand out in any strange way.
And we do have a letter of support from the neighbors across the street.
Is there anyone here in opposition?
Nobody has signed up.
I'd make a motion to support the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application. You're approved.
All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Item number 6, case number 14114, request of Zach Woods for a variance to the side yard setback located at 1173 Northwest 56th Street.
Hello, I'm Zach Woods. I don't want to take much of your time. I'm here to answer any questions, or if you want a quick explanation, I can offer that as well.
And you live at 1173 Northwest 56th?
I live at 224 Northwest Eubanks.
Okay.
Is the property north of you occupied?
There's an empty lot between our corner lot and then the adjacent corner lot. There's an empty lot between us. So you can see on the image here, you see the house that faces Military?
Right.
That's empty.
It is
an
empty.
lot.
I thought it
Yes.
was. Okay. And this area is undergoing a substantial rebirth, I guess. There's a lot of new construction, infill construction going on here, and much to the benefit of the neighborhood, I think. And the amount of encroachment that's being discussed here is so small, and what's across the street to the west from it is not other residential property. If there's anybody...
Let me just interrupt real quick. We do have a gentleman that's asked to speak on behalf of this application. Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Littlefield here? Go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and speak to the application.
I'm Rob Littlefield, 1148 Northwest 56th Street. I'm founder and president of the Neighborhood Association. And as Janice Barrow said, this is a neighborhood that over the past 10 years has gone through dramatic efforts to be saved in the first place, and dramatic efforts to reinvent it is the word that I use, and on vacant and dilapidated lots. PUD 500, SPUD 500, SPUD 711 are two projects that are done. You'll notice that PUD 711 extends almost next door to where this item is being considered. Those SPUDs work very, very closely with the Neighborhood Association, and they have dramatic setback variances within those. As Janice Parra said, this is minimal. The Neighborhood Association has met formally, and this was presented by these fellows behind me, and we totally support this. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Wants to be heard, I'll move approval.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Register your vote. You're approved.
Thank you very much.
Would somebody recall the gentlemen that are in the lobby, case number 4 that we've moved to the end of the agenda? Okay, thank you.
Tell them you got approved for a signage variance.
Welcome back.
That was fast. I didn't realize there was...
There wasn't much after you.
Yeah, so we're trying to see if the amendment would be sufficient for the owner, and we're just trying to get a hold of
Are
him.
you requesting a continuance to give yourselves more time to reconsider your application?
I think at this time, we're more likely leaning towards the amendment of one sign at 350 square feet.
You want to revise your request?
Is that...
Well, here's the thing. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Scott spoke, for himself. He didn't speak on behalf of the board.
On behalf of everything.
Absolutely,
that's right.
no, yeah.
I'm sorry, we've been able to reach part of our client, part of the in-house counsel. We've not been able to reach Mr. Lenormand, who would have to make the final.
Let me suggest that you accept a continuance.
Yeah.
The next meeting is September the 3rd. The meeting after that is September the 17th. It gives you a chance to, clear your head and to more,
That'd be helpful if we could do
to
that.
better consider the position of this board, to think about, how you want to move forward. I think, it's clear that 350 square feet at 2 times on this building is probably not acceptable to this board. I'm not telling you what is and what isn't. We each consider these matters individually. So, but would a continuous request be acceptable to you?
Yes.
September the 3rd or September the 17th?
Shall I withdraw my motion?
I would.
I'll do that.
September 3rd would be best for us, if that works for...
Okay. I'll make a motion that we continue case number 14112 to September the 3rd.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. You're continued to September 3rd.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. There's no other business before this board. I would like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion and a second. We are adjourned.